the ambassador. And once we pass it on to the ambassador, when he finishes, then I think we'll bring in Princess Katarina. So everyone will have about 10 to 12 minutes to speak. After that, there'll be a short discussion between yourselves on some of the work that you do, and if there's any similarities in some of the ideas and the work you have, and then we'll pass it on to the audience where they can ask you all questions, and hopefully we'll finish at about I would say probably about 15 to 5. You will also have enough chance to meet and greet each other afterwards. So shall we start with yourself, Professor Marie Catherine Bearden from Texas?
Okay. Well, who am I? Very quickly, to let you know who I am. I was born in North Africa, Morocco precisely, in a French family. I am bilingual in French and Spanish. My early years were divided between Africa, Congo more precisely, and France. My education, well, I was educated in France, but also in the US. I have had long exposure to international business through my father, and then later diplomacy through my husband, who is listening right now. Good manners were taught at home at an early age, and that interest blended, I would say, into my deeper interest in etiquette, in protocol and diplomacy over the years. My senior diplomat husband and I lived in Africa, West and East Africa, in South Asia, Pakistan precisely, and in Europe, where he was posted. When it comes to my teaching profession, my academic years, my academic career, I should say, was spent in 4 continents, from kindergarten to baccalaureate, which is the equivalent of the 12th grade in the US, was in the French system. It was, I would say, all over the world, if I may say. And then the higher education was done in the US. Etiquette and protocol were involved in all of these academic activities, including Georgetown University, George Washington, and more recently the University of Texas at Austin, where I live, where Milt and I live. And in 2016, I founded the Académie de l'Étiquette. So now, since I am the only French person in the group, in the speakers, with the speakers today, let me just take 1 minute to explain the word etiquette. The word etiquette is actually French. I think everybody knows that. It means label, it means tag, it means sticker, it means sign also. And it was initially introduced during the reign of the French King Louis XIV between the 17th and the 18th century. And that referred to codes of conduct and proper behavior with the gardens in his palace. He had a garden architect by the name of André Le Nôtre. And André Le Nôtre was absolutely, he was very, very upset with the way the nobles, excuse me, the nobles would treat his grounds. So he went to complain to the king, and the king said, do whatever you have to do. I want the best gardens in Europe. So he came up with signs and that he would put in grounds, and that really worked. So no more nobles sitting on beautiful flower beds or ground or gardens, no more horses coming up, and so on and so forth. So the king really thought, oh, I have a good thing here. So he came up with a very, very heavy daily schedule, where all the nobles around him would come. And he, of course, this was all to have a total control on them. They would have to dress 3 or 4 times a day, and that was very expensive. And he got all kinds of ideas, just again to have control on his people. And well, but etiquette, it's actually, since then, the word etiquette, which by the way was not used, the word etiquette was not used then, right? So today, it has kept that idea, which is a norm of conduct used by human beings during any type of interactions. It dictates what our behavior and manners should be in society. So why is etiquette so important? Well, probably 2 words, but I'm going to explain a little more. I would say respect and communication. Uh, um, Etiquette, when we know some rules, it's there are rules. When we know some rules, it really increases our self-esteem. It puts people around you more at ease. It can also enhance our status at work. And of course, it makes very good first impressions, which are absolutely essential. I often tell my students, you need only 7 to 10 seconds to give the best or the worst of yourself. And usually those impressions stick with people. So we also hear very often social etiquette. Well, what is it? It's exactly what it sounds and how it sounds. It refers to behavior in social situations, interactions between the family members, friends, co-workers, strangers. It's actually the foundation of good manners, I would say. Etiquette also enables us to earn respect and appreciation, as I said a little earlier. And it teaches the way to talk, the way to behave, and in society. So I was also asked to quickly define what corporate etiquette is. So corporate etiquette, which is also called business etiquette, also refers to sets of rules in the workplace in order to maintain the decorum of the organizations. These rules are there to create a professional, respectful atmosphere. The rules help us to improve communication again, which is absolutely essential in a productive place. Perhaps later we can give some examples of that, but to quickly emphasize on the benefits of the corporate etiquette training, they are actually vital in a business world. Well-trained workers are part of the professional success of the company. I would also say a good training helps promoting business growth. It brings good morale and efficiency among the employees. And when traveling to other countries, and that is very important, a well-trained professional will handle well a transaction with other cultures. And so when we talk about business etiquette, we talk about meeting etiquette. So in whatever we do in business, in academia, in the diplomatic world, or any form of gathering, these rules are essential to maintain a positive and professional image during these meetings. And they can also be seminars, they can be presentations. And I would say, I know that sometimes it can be cumbersome, but that's probably when we use our rules. The way you conduct yourself in these situations leave, I would say, a lasting impression. Perhaps I should not give any examples of how to behave in a meeting. We can maybe talk about that later on. I don't want to be too long. But what do I do with all that knowledge? Well, I work with companies, with corporations, to train their personnel. I teach them the do's and don'ts. I coach them in social skills, of course, and dining etiquette, which is very, very important, since meals are very often chosen to have meetings. I also coach them on personal branding. And when it comes to international customs and etiquette, I also teach them what the minimum they have to do and to say when they go overseas. I also work with college students who are ready to enter the workforce, and the program includes to prepare for interviews. I teach them how to dress for the occasion. I teach them what I call the power skills and so on. I also work with children, always through role playing, and that is essentially the same thing with different approach and social etiquettes and dining etiquettes. And finally, I'll stop there. I also have a popular program called Simple Elegance, which helps improve the image of the host or the guest. You don't need to have a white starch linen to be elegant. It can be a barbecue, it can be a picnic, and it can be very elegant and certainly very simple. So that program emphasizes on feeling more comfortable by learning all kinds of tricks to entertain or to be a good guest. Voila. Thank you. And it's time for me to listen to our next speaker.
Thank you for that, Professor Marie Catherine Bearden from Texas, United States. We are joined now by Ambassador Dino Jalal. I'm going to let the ambassador to speak after Mr. Darren Robinson from the Coaching Academy and Leadership Academy in the UK. Mr. Darren Robinson, do you want to give a few words on some of the work that you do around etiquette, leadership, and basically breeding good manners in people?
Brilliant. Thank you, Mohammed. Thanks for the introduction. Just a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in the West Country in the United Kingdom. Again, into a military family. So a lot of my family are both Army and Navy. My father was a bit of a stickler for discipline and etiquette, probably more so than my peers. I decided to leave school, and as a shy, rather introvert teenager, decided to join the Army. And out of all the regiments to pick, I decided to join the Parachute Regiment, much to the dismay. So I thought a 3-year adventure would be the best thing for me to do, best decision, and ended up doing just over 24 years. In my last 2.5 years, I was the Regimental Sergeant Major. And just to explain what the role is really about the Regimental Sergeant Major, he's the purveyor of standards, etiquette and manners, if you like, within the unit. He's the confidant to the commanding officer. Now, obviously, it's quite interesting. We've already had a few French words already this evening, and I'm going to throw another one in. And regimental sergeant major, obviously the word sergeant is actually comes from the French word servant. And obviously this type of servant leadership still resonates much through the British military, and more so probably in the British Army than the other services. Now, being the regimental sergeant major, I was the senior servant, if you like, within a unit. So what that meant was keeping up the traditions of the unit and the wider regiment, and indeed the British Army. And a large amount of my job, I mean, a lot of people have got this sort of like stereotype of a shouty, sort of like Windsor Davies type regimental sergeant major, but it's more to do with sort of like the education, keeping up the traditions, and being the conduit really between the commanding officer, or the CEO as it would be in a corporate world, and the men themselves. Now, anyone that's held a rank in the British Army, as you go through, it's an education in itself, like any promotion in any organisation. Now, sergeants, colour sergeants, sergeant majors, regimental sergeant majors have all got their part to play, and they all set the conditions, allowing officers really to focus on the up and out, more political, more strategic, and the traditions, etiquette and stuff is really is kept going, if you like, by the senior NCOs and warrant officers in that unit. Now, although the British Army's evolved sort of in its technologies, especially in the last few years, we still hold very deep and valued traditions, and within that, we've got our own strong values and standards. And I'll just briefly go through them: of selfless commitment, thinking of others, loyalty, integrity, discipline, and courage, both physical and moral courage. Now, these are the type of educational lessons that we push down, and we spread the education and the knowledge, and we educate and make people aware. Now, I think with the British Army recruiting from such a varied background, now we recruit people that may not be so versed in etiquette and manners. So there is going to be a large portion of training and education, dare I say it. Now, I agree with what's already been stated this evening, and the fact that, people can be quite awkward when they're not aware. They can become, or it appears that they can be quite rude or awkward. But with a little bit of confidence, and they know what to do, and what the etiquette is, I think it can dispel any fears that they may have, and it puts people at ease. It just welcomes people into the fold, if you like. There's a great quote that they use in the parachute regiment, and it's actually from the parachute school, and it says, "Knowledge dispels fear." And I'm a big believer in that. As a young 18-year-old exiting an aircraft at 800 feet for the first time, you've got to be confident. You've got to know what you're doing, and not be awkward, and believe in what you're doing. And I think with a bit of education and awareness, I think the young men and women that we've had in the military, they get a good education, a good grounding in etiquette and manners. Now, again, talking about education, I remember as a junior sergeant, when I first promoted, going to my first black tie event, and before you go in, before you promote, a senior sergeant major, if you like, the president of the mess, so to speak, will give you a tour around. It will tell you the do's and don'ts, what you can do, what you can't do. And even on the evening of the occasion, what will happen is, before the VIPs turn up and the regimental sergeant major to host the dinner night, there'll be a long list that will be discussed with all the guests and obviously regimental members about how the evening will unfold, and it will cover all sorts of things: bugle calls, when to take a seat, when to start eating, what to do on toast, the full works. And what it does is it actually welcomes people in. And a lot of the times what we'll do is junior sergeants will actually give them something to do. We'll give them either a toast, or they'll say grace, and it just welcomes them in and lets them know they're a part of the team. Now, I would say that my own awareness was heightened when I was selected to be a instructor at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst. And the reason I say it was heightened, because obviously training officer cadets and going to a lot more formal dinner nights, you learn quite a bit down there. And then also it enlightened me to RSM John Lord. And basically, for those of you who don't know, he was originally a guardsman, and he was the first regimental sergeant major of the academy, who also parachuted into Arnhem. Now, in doing so, and the ill-fated Bridge Too Far, he was actually captured and spent the remainder of the war in a prisoner of war camp. Now, if you read the chronicles on JC Lord, what you'll find is he was actually injured and shot in the arm. Now, although a lot of the 1st Airborne Division weren't in great spirits, what they found was a great leader, and he kept the etiquette and the traditions of the British Army going. And when he was fully recovered, he decided to spruce himself up, clean himself up, and to salute all the German officers. Now, by doing that, they conceded and actually, let them go out and collect firewood, gave them some privileges that they didn't have beforehand. And it just was an absolute exemplar. And when they were actually liberated, he had all the names of all the prisoners. He made sure there was a roll call daily. He kept up the traditions, and it kept up the fighting spirits of all those soldiers and prisoners during such bleak times. So that really resonated with me. And obviously, as I went through my career and ended up the regimental sergeant major, I always remembered that story of JC Lord and what that meant to him and to me as serving senior NCO, and hopefully one day, and it did happen to me, become a regimental sergeant major myself. Now, my other experiences is after deciding to leave the British Army, after being a regimental sergeant major, I decided to do something totally out of the blue and go and live in the Middle East for a few years. Now, throughout my military career, I've operated in the Middle East for over 3 years on operations, both Iraq and Afghanistan. Now, I would suggest to anybody that's going to go to a foreign country to look at the customs and traditions. So there's, again, there's not a full par. You don't drop the ball or embarrass yourself or make other people feel awkward. However, I think to really fully understand etiquette and manners in a foreign country, it's a good idea to live there and fully immerse yourself into that culture. Now, one thing that I was able to do living in the Middle East for years at a time was the fact that I could still refer back to the 27 articles by T.E. Lawrence. I think it's a great overview. And a lot of those rules or articles still remain extant. Now, I know there's nuances of living in the Middle East and etiquette and, crossing your legs, showing the soles of your feet. Even dates, whether you take 1, 3, or 5, and certain little rules such as that. But I think one thing that really hit home is when you actually immerse yourself into a culture and you get to know people. And what really resonated to me was how much more family orientated people are in the Middle East, and how they view things is very different. Some of it is I would deem better, and it made me more educated. Obviously, there's larger families. There's no welfare system. It's integral. It's organic. So whereas people get elderly in the West, maybe they go into a home or something like that, and they're more catered for and looked after in the family home in the Middle East, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I remember going to a dinner with a friend of mine, and a gentleman come across to the table, and it was a second cousin of his. And I said, Mohammed, I've never seen this guy before, and I've known you for over 10 years. And he says, oh, it's a second cousin. Okay. And I explained to him that I could walk past first cousins and not recognize them. And he said how sorry he was for me. Also, the work-life balance is very different. Obviously, in the West, it's very much 100 miles an hour. We want things and we want it now. And that's not always the best solution or the best way of going about things. And what I used to find myself doing is I also worked at the officer college doing military training, but I would go and ask for a program change, but it wouldn't be a 5-minute conversation. I would definitely have to think about, of staying in there, drinking some chai, talking about London, talking about the football, talking about how hot it's going to be before anything would be discussed about a training program. Obviously, the response at times would be inshallah, and maybe a day or so later, I'd get a phone call to say, Mr. Darren, the program's been changed. Right. Okay. So, just these little things that you learn, definitely being immersed in the culture itself. I would say, get to know people, get to know them. Don't be so forceful. It was a great experience, I must admit, one that I'll never forget, living in the Middle East. And throughout my career for a long time now, when I speak to both military and civilian people, they always seem to ask me, they say, why do you think that manners are so important when operating in teams? And I say that you can have a purpose, or we would call it a mission statement, which is great at connecting everybody, giving them an overall vision. But truly what knits everything together is manners and etiquette. I think these behaviors break down barriers. It makes people feel at ease. It builds a culture of excellence. Now, whether you're training on operations or in my current job now, working coaching centres leadership, working with the high performing teams, I think it's how you firstly engage with people, you talk with them, you break down any barriers, speaking to people how you would like to be engaged, how you'd like to be spoken to, but also sometimes looking at some of the nuances as well. How you may feel and how somebody else feels may be two totally different things. And to know how people feel, really, you need to get to know them. You need to get to know them professionally. You need to get to know them personally. And you need to know what drivers and what motivates people. So if you're trying to forge teams, especially high performing teams, you really need to know these factors if you really want to get the best outputs. Now, I'm passionate about etiquette and manners. I think it's done me well. One of my first talks to the mess in my parachute battalion was how I didn't think I was the fittest, best soldier in the unit. However, I treated people well. I talked to them about family, about how family is not necessarily, or the definition of family doesn't necessarily mean by blood. It means living in close environment, okay, for long periods of time. And I believe that's what I had. I always treated people fair, and it's done me a world of good. And I hope that I've been able to impart my manners and my behaviours on the younger generation that have come through, and hopefully, carry on that succession. And that's me in a nutshell, Mohammed.
Hey, thanks, Darren, for that in-depth, some of your in-depth views on various things. I'm just writing some questions for Professor Marie and also yourself, but I'm going to keep those questions to the end, I think. We've got Ambassador Dino Pati Jalal, the former Deputy Foreign Minister of Indonesia. My friend, where are you? Okay, I have to unmute you first. Hold on. Okay, you have to press the unmute button from your side.
All right. I'm good. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, absolutely. How are you? And do you want to?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good, good.
Am I the only COVID-19 survivor in this Zoom call?
Yeah. I'm sure I can find actually the other ambassador on the other side. That's Ambassador Jean Pillard, who's the Haitian ambassador to the UK. He's a COVID survivor as well. So I don't know what it is about you ambassadors, but you survive. Thank God. But what I'm going to do, Ambassador Jalal, if you can speak for about 10, 12 minutes, give your views on etiquette and manners from a diplomatic angle, and also mention some of the work that you are doing around engaging people, helping people engage with each other in an honest and good manner. That would be fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. And by the way, whenever you stop me, just interrupt because sometimes I don't have a stopwatch around me. So please feel free to just give me a sign and I'll stop. But thank you, Mohammed, for inviting me to this seminar, and I'm very delighted to be able to share my experience on the question of etiquette, manner, and leadership and other things. But first, what I want to say is that restraint is very much part of etiquette and manner, and especially in diplomatic negotiations. I remember I was joining the Indonesian mediating team for a negotiation between the Philippine government against the Muslim rebels, the MNLF, they call it, and the famous leader of the MNLF at the time was Nur Miswari, right? And I remember the first time they met, Nur Miswari, the rebel leader, was just came out saying so many nasty things towards his Filipino government negotiator, right? Very nasty. He had a lot of things to say. And it just came out. And if it was me, I probably would walk out and leave, right? But it just amazed me to see how Manuel Yan, at the time, the chief negotiator for the Philippine government, just sat there and took everything that came at him, no matter how rude the words were directed towards him. So he just stood there, looked at his counterpart in the eyes. And after about an hour or so, the meeting was adjourned, and the Nur Miswari was exhausted. He had no more things to say, no more insults to hurl at Manuel Yan. And then Manuel Yan said, "Hey, are you finished? Let's get on with our work, right?" And I think Nur Miswari was really taken back at how cool and composed his negotiating opponent was, and he was embarrassed. And after that, negotiation took a positive turn, right? So that was really an amazing display of emotional intelligence on the part of Manuel Yan, and also restraint. And he did it as part of a strategy to win the heart of his negotiating opponent. Right? So I'm a retired diplomat, and I've had to culturally adapt to different circumstances because as a diplomat, I lived in Asian culture, African and Western culture, and even Latin as well. So the experience taught me the skill or the ability to develop a cultural quotient. There's an intelligence quotient, and there's such a thing called cultural quotient, which means, as just the previous speaker said, the ability to connect with any culture, and to be able to just have to be comfortable and at ease in no matter what cultural surroundings you're in. As you can see, I'm Asian. I come from Indonesia, a large Asian country, and home to the world's largest Muslim population. And as an Asian, my predilection is to always show respect, perhaps more so than any other culture. But I'm not. I'm easily given to bowing to people and genuflecting and showing signs of submission, not because I submit, but it's because humility is a sign of you know, it's a good sign to show to people. You know, the Japanese bow half their body to show respect to others. You know, sometimes for Asians, for Indonesians, we just do this with our hands and then we bow. You know, we do this a lot, and my impression is when we do this to foreigners, especially Westerners, they like it. Yeah, they like this attitude of respect. Sometimes I kiss the hands of people. I bow and I kiss their hands. In our culture, you know, it's different than in Western culture. You know, a gentleman would kiss the hand of a lady, right? Now this is entirely different. Kids would kiss the hands of elderlies as a sign of respect, right? And I would do that too if I meet somebody, my counterpart or somebody of high stature. I would bow and kiss their hands. Usually a man, yeah. I don't do it to women because it's just a bit awkward to do so, right? But I do it to men, and usually with good impact, right? And I've also been amazed to see how Westerners would come in to my culture and try to get along with it, and then they do quite well. You know, for example, I come from a ethnic group called Minang, and in Minangkabau, what we do is we eat with our hands, right? It's quite you know, it's just a culture, right? And I know it's quite difficult, and some people say, oh, I would never ever do that, right? But I've been quite amazed and astonished to see, you know, foreign diplomats come to my you know, village, and they would eat with their hands, even though they're not accustomed to do so. And when they do that, they win the hearts of people in the village, right? Now, there are many ways of you know, getting along in social circles in diplomatic world, right? And there are different rules for it, and different people have different rules. But for me, the first rule is always don't brag, right? And, you know, I say this because I've been in so many conversations where people's first instinct is just to brag, you know, about how rich they are, or you know, what kind of things they have achieved, and so on and so on. You know, it's good to talk about these things, but the moment you feel to be bragging, that's the moment, you know, at some point you lose some credibility. And in fact, the other approach is always right. You know, when you're humble and people find out that you've done a lot of things that are worthy of mention, and you don't mention it, you know, people tend to develop greater respect for you, right? And you know, I know I mentioned the term respect before, respect of cultures and so on, but I think nothing works. Nothing is more impactful than respect of opinion of the people that you are talking to, right? And I find that is the best way to connect with people, when people feel that you're listening to them, and you're not listening just out of what do you call it, just to be nice, but you actually listening to them. You look at them in the eye, and you actually understand what they're saying. That's the best way to show respect in different in social circumstances. I tend also to always be the first to say hello, right? I don't like it when somebody's looking at me and no one makes a move, right? I have this what do you call it? I always tell my diplomats, have a host or butler mentality, right? Always be the first to approach people, look them in the eye and say, hey, how are you? My name is Dino, and so on. And, you know, it's nice to be here. I would not want to be beaten to it by, you know, whoever is in the area. Yeah. So, and when I'm in the middle of conversations, I like to take charge, so to speak, meaning that I always want to be the first to offer people a drink, to ask them if I can get them anything, even though I'm not the host, right? But I always tell my diplomats, you always need to be that butler, the unofficial butler or unofficial host. That's how you sort of take charge of different social situations. And there is a perception, I should let this forum know, because I come from Indonesia and we were colonized for centuries by Western powers. The popular perception in my country is that Westerners are arrogant people, right? For some reason, this is the stereotype that they get of Westerners. So it's always very important when Westerners come to either Middle East or Asia and so on, as the previous speaker has indicated, to really show great humility. Yeah, it's very important to do that and break whatever stereotypes that they had over Westerners. When I was a diplomat, when I was in the circuit, I remember there were so many meetings that I took part in. We had a number of sensitive issues, right? Back then, for example, Indonesia was not a democracy that it is now. We had human rights issues, authoritarianism, and so on, right? And we would meet, European guests who would come in, and obviously they wanted to criticize us, rightly so, right? But so many times the message was lost because the moment they came in, they just started finger pointing, and confrontational attitude and so on. And so many of those meetings could have gone a better way, and the message could have sunk in better. But unfortunately, the way the message was delivered was often not particularly sympathetic, right? So how you deliver the message is really as important as the message itself, right? And I've also found that the diplomats that are really good are the ones that can use humor in the most difficult situations, right? This is how I separate the brilliant diplomats than from the average diplomats, right? The brilliant diplomats, no matter how difficult the situation is, they always have to find a way to insert or inject humor into it. I think this is a special quality, but it's also something that can be trained. I also use my wife a lot. My wife is an important weapon. When I was in Washington, D.C., working there, it's very hard to meet senators or congressmen or cabinet members, and so on, right? But my wife belongs to a club of wives over there. The wife of dignitaries, the wife of senators and congressmen. They belong to many clubs. And whenever I can't get an appointment, I would beg to my wife, hey, please use your connection to make me an appointment with their husband, with whatever senator, And usually that's a more effective way than relying on former channels, right? But the wife factor, the spouse factor can be quite an important, an important method of connecting in social and political circles. And lastly, Muhammad knows this. I've been involved in this project called 1000 Abrahamic Circles, and the idea is really to try to develop, to change bigotry and negativity at the grassroots level among the Abrahamic religions, that is between Muslims, Christians, and Jewish people, and to turn bigotry and negativity towards friendship and respect, right? So we've been having this program where we engage 3 different leaders from Islam, Christianity, and Judaism from different countries to spend a week in each other's homes, right? And this was somewhat a risky move because you don't know if they're going to get along, and religion is such a sensitive subject. But alhamdulillah, it's been going well, and the reason why is that we ask every religious leader to put themselves in the other's foot, right? And to always show respect of the other religions' traditions, right? Whatever it is, whether you have to take off your shoes when you come in the house, you have to dress a certain way, and so on and so on, right? But it's been a difficult exercise that has proved successful only because the different participants who are joining this program go out of their way to respect and understand the customs of their host, right? So maybe I'll stop there, and I'll be happy to take any questions later.
Ambassador, it's always a pleasure to hear from you. And there's a lot of information that you haven't given away. And so maybe we can talk about giving you another opportunity sometime in the future for that. Thank you. And now we're going to turn to Her Royal Highness, Princess Katarina. Princess Katarina, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Thank you so much. I see the ambassador's been talking for a long time, so maybe I should cut mine short.
No, don't worry. You know how ambassadors are. No, you know how ambassadors are. So, no offense, Dino.
No worries.
Very, very quickly, I'm actually a very private and a very quiet, shy person. You may not think so, but I really am. I had a change in life about 10 years ago. So I was then asked to come and talk to children. And when I spoke to children, I told them that there's this particular way to behave and how not to behave. And we were talking about how to be positive, how to be optimistic, and how one should treat, these were children in a private school, treat their staff and how to treat people in restaurants. I know it sounds a crazy thing to say, but it goes back to etiquette and good manners. When you go to a restaurant and you don't treat the waitress or the waiter nicely, it quite often shows how you are going to treat people as you get older. My father always said to me, treat people the way you want to be treated yourself. I've also been told that when you write to people, you always write in a way that you will get the answer and response that you need. It doesn't matter whether it's to a member of the royal family. It does not matter whether it is to the diplomatic services. And also it doesn't matter if it is in the military or army or one of those areas, because if you want to have a good response and have a good diplomacy with people, you've got to behave in a particular manner. Before the unfortunate virus and the COVID, I used to go to a school in the countryside in Sussex. And there were some children there who were very quiet and shy, and they were being bullied. And they were being bullied because they didn't have the same amount of money as a lot of the other children in their class. There was one particular girl, I remember her. She was very quiet, very shy. And she said, I make my own clothes. So I sort of asked her, because of course I didn't know her background, and said, but why are you making your own clothes? And she said, because she wanted to. Of course, all the other children were bullying her because she couldn't afford for her parents to go and buy proper clothes. And those other children did not understand why and what the reasons are and how this young girl could actually progress in life. At the end of the meeting, they're talking to the children, finding out things about them. seeing how they are, seeing what they need to do, and how they react when their parents ask them to do things or actually tell them to do things. This little girl, she wasn't expecting what I was going to say, but she needed positive energy. She needed to be optimistic about where to go and how to fill in her forms so that she can join her university. I said to her, and in front of all the other children in the class, how do we know in 10 years' time you are not going to be the next fashion house in England? Of course, everyone suddenly looked at this girl who suddenly grew 6 inches. She got that energy. But the thing is, when you meet, it's been said many times along today, when you meet people, you got to know how to approach people. You got to know how to behave with people. You got to know how to shake a hand. So I'll use Donald Trump just for the sake of it. When he went to North Korea and when he was shaking, they were shaking hands and they were shaking and shaking and shaking, which you shouldn't do. You should actually just do 2 or 3 pumps like this, 1, 2, 3. And then you let go of the hand. That is a very polite way. And you don't grab the hand. You don't just let the hand be floppy, because the other person will take advantage of you. When I was teaching some children at private school, once again in London, I shook hands with every single one of those children. And I gave them the view of what I thought and how I thought and felt they would behave when they got older in business and things like that. And the teacher came to me afterwards and said, how do you know this about all the children? Where did you get this information? And I said, just by shaking the hand. It's incredible of what you can learn and how you can learn just by doing a simple thing of shaking a hand. How you speak to people, how you talk with people. You might be the little girl or boy, going to a party, not knowing a single person. And you're the one who will sit in the corner or stand in the corner with something to drink, and you will watch what everybody is doing. Sometimes that is a very good thing to do, because you are learning how to behave and actually how not to behave with other people. Just before the COVID or the shutdown, lockdown last year, I went to a diplomatic reception. And I walked into the reception room. There was 1,000 people there. And this person was quite amused with the way that I went straight through up to the ambassador and shook his hand, and how he grabbed my hand, and how we had our photograph taken. So when we went inside, this person said to me, but how do you know how to behave? I couldn't turn around and say, I know how to behave, because that was the way I was brought up. I told him that you just watch and learn and see how other people are doing. And I found out he was a new ambassador. He's never been an ambassador before. And he didn't know anybody else in the room. So from things like that, I took it upon myself, because the ambassador couldn't, our host couldn't take people around and said, this is His Excellency here, His Excellency with this and that place. So I took him around and introduced him to a handful of ambassadors, and I left him to it, because by that time he started to learn and found out that the other ambassadors were very friendly. They could talk to you. they could help you. And of course, they all exchange cards, so they could slowly move forward and they can meet new people. I know when you go to a new country, it is very difficult, particularly as an ambassador, when you're moving every 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years. It is very, very difficult. But that's why you have your office, so you can introduce each other. And as the ambassador had said earlier on, that quite often it is the wives who help to do the meetings so that you can move forward and sometimes meet the right person. I also did a lot with a butler school just before everything had closed down. We taught butlers how they should, I don't know if the word is actually right, butler, how to buttle, and how they quite often greet you at your host's door, how they behave with you, how they talk with you, how they introduce you to the host if they were there at the time, and how they do not cross the line. I think it came out in one of the films like Gosford Park or Downton Abbey, when the man of the house had spoken to the butler, or the man of the bedchamber, as they were called in those days. What did you think of the conversation, and what did you hear? We always teach them that you hear everything, but you know nothing. And the reason we teach them that, because you have to be aware of what is going on. We teach them how to, at dinner parties, how to pull a chair out for the lady, how to push the chair in for the lady, how to open the door, how to serve at the table, how, if you accidentally drop something on one of the guests, of how to behave at that point. We also teach them how to lay the table, how one uses certain words, like, it goes back to the French word again, serviette. In France, a serviette is also known as the napkin, but they don't call it a napkin. But in England, a serviette is a cloth which you use to serve, but it can also be the same material and everything as the napkin. So a lot of people get that mixed up. A napkin goes onto your lap. A napkin is where you dab your mouth, not wipe it on your mouth. A napkin is an item which helps you to protect your clothes. And a serviette is where the butler uses sometimes, for example, with hot dishes, also maybe with pouring of the wine. And, when you pour red wine, sometimes a little bit of red wine drips, so you've got to get rid of it quickly before it goes over the tablecloth or it goes all over you. It's also important to know that when you go to a house party, you always take a small gift. It doesn't matter how big the gift is or how expensive it is. And you always buy a gift when you go to someone's house in your reach. So for example, if you're going to a multimillionaire's house, you don't go and buy them a Rolex watch, because one, you can't afford it, and two, it's over the top. So it's always nice to take a little something. So if you're an author, the best thing you can take when you go to a house party to someone's house is to take your new book, your novel, or whatever your book is about, and sign it to your host. It's a gracious thing. Most people take a box of chocolates, but a lot of people now with food intolerances don't like chocolates. But it's always good if you know they've got intolerances, to go and find something which they are able to have so they can put it on the table. There's so many different things you need to do. So if you, for example, go to a dinner party and you know that your host is a wine connoisseur, don't buy any wine, because they will know whether it's a good wine or a bad wine. So don't embarrass yourself like that. But anyway, I know I've been talking, I've been talking for at least 10 minutes now because I've been watching the clock. And I know that we've got a lot of questions and answers. So I will finish my little speech there and let everybody continue. Thank you very much.
Princess Katarina, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to hear, some of the suggestions of some of the work that you are doing, and it's always a pleasure to learn from you. What I'm going to do, my pleasure. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a question each of the 4 speakers, and then what I'll do is I'll put it out to our friends amongst the audience if they can start bringing questions in. So first, Professor Marie Catherine from Texas. What are some of the do's and don'ts when traveling to Muslim countries, for example?
Oh, that's interesting. I am sure Master Dino is going to help me there. But as a Westerner, there are things that we need to know, and it's one of the things. There are actually quite a few things, but one of the things that Westerners often do is to show affection by holding hands and so on. That is one of the things that is to be absolutely avoided when you are visiting a Muslim country, an Arab country. I would also talk about handshaking. If you are a man, handshaking, a handshake is widely spread in Muslim countries. But when you have to greet a Muslim woman, you absolutely have to be cautious, and I would say only greet a Muslim woman with a handshake if she stretches her hand out. Otherwise, just greet her with holding your hand in your heart and showing respect. Now, if you are a woman, be prepared to that Muslims might shake hands with your husband or your partner, but not with you. And that happened to me. I remember Milt and I were traveling in Lebanon, and we were actually invited by the Hezbollah, one of the Hezbollah groups, and everybody was shaking hands. I was the only female. Everybody was shaking hands, and I have lived in Muslim countries, but so I was doing the same thing, and I went and extended my hand, and one of the leaders actually just put his hand in the heart and bowed at me. It was a little embarrassing for me, but I certainly learned a lesson. So women should be cautious when it comes to shaking hands in a Muslim country. I would also say be cautious and perhaps not discuss any religion among, certainly do not mention that you are perhaps atheist. It's very indelicate unless you really know the host. One of the fun things of being in a Muslim country, I think I have visited quite enough to have an opinion, is when you go to a market, be prepared to bargain. I love that. I love to bargain. I always think it's a game, and I'm a big, good bargainer. But they are better than I am. I'm sure they always win, but it's fun. So when you visit a Muslim country, there is no fixed price most of the time. So you just bargain and have fun. Now, for when it comes to clothes, you have to be careful, especially again if you're a woman. You have to respect the culture. You absolutely have to avoid wearing shorts or tight clothes. Always cover your shoulders and your knees. If you visit a mosque, as a woman, be sure that you are going to wear a scarf or a veil in your head. And of course, men and women will have to remove their shoes. Now, maybe one more thing I would add, there are so many things, right, that you really have to respect. It's very, very important. But one of the things is alcohol, to be very cautious with alcohol. In many Muslim countries, alcohol is prohibited in public places, although hosts may drink and they may offer you alcohol beverages, and that's another story. But be careful if you bring your own bottle, not to avoid drinking in public places like in a cafe or so, because if they don't serve it, don't bring your own just in front of everybody, and certainly don't drink too much to the point of being totally drunk in public. It's absolutely unacceptable. There are so many more, and I'm sure Ambassador Dino perhaps can add more interesting points. First of all, was I out of the line? Oh, okay, good.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I mean, Professor Marie, I mean, there's so much experience and knowledge in you, and a lot of the stuff that you've done. I keep saying to people that, you know, when there is experience, you should think about writing a book as well, and don't be shy. I'll be happy to connect you with friends as well. We can help you on that. But I can see you got a lot of books in the background, so maybe you're an author already. I don't know.
All of them are from my husband.
Oh gosh, yes, Milton can help. Darren, I'm just like thinking, one of the questions I was like thinking about, and one of our friends also mentioned it, is something about values and manners. What is the link between values and manners? And also, how do you ensure that young soldiers, for example, young people generally, understand the value that is expected of them? So it's not just young soldiers, but young people generally. How they can understand the values expected of them. Let me just unmute you. I think you muted. See, you're so polite. You mute yourself. Oh gosh, hold on again. I think if you press, yeah, there you go.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a good question actually. I think the values and standards that's taught and educated our young soldiers with the values and standards of the British Army are quite broad brush. But although we have the principles, we do onward training at each stage. So not only as soldiers, as junior NCOs, senior NCOs, warrant officers, and it goes up in stages. And we have in-depth debates. And as I mentioned when I was doing the 10-minute talk, about a lot of this is about awareness. It's about how you treat people, about how to be an exemplar. You know, to show people the way. I think the British Army has gone a long way from what it used to be. You know, it's after thinking soldiers. It's after people that are respectful. Obviously, the British Army in particular is an expeditionary force, so we are always on operations, Africa, Asia. You know, a lot of our soldiers are experienced. They've held shuras in Asian countries. They know some of the etiquette. Obviously, they get taught, you know, how to conduct some of the shuras and meetings when we do our specific training. And we have people that are culturally aware. We have cultural advisors as well that advise the British Army and the do's and don'ts. In my own unit in particular, because we were so operational, it was talked about quite in depth about the different times of year to different faiths. There was a minority of Muslims within the unit itself, but that was always talked about. Obviously because of Ramadan and fasting and being able to train. But also I think going back to the values and standards of youngsters themselves, I think it goes on about there are a lot of people from different backgrounds, and I think regardless of how talented they are, it can be a big stumbling block if they don't have the etiquette and the manners required to break down those barriers. And people, dare I say it, will be judged on appearing rude or awkward. And I think by what it was mentioned earlier by the Ambassador Dino previously, of being the first one to shake hands and being out there and actually engaging in people, I think it is an educational thing for youngsters. It depends very much on people's backgrounds, but it doesn't mean to say that someone from a less privileged background can't be educated. And I think there's a real pattern emerging of sitting back or stepping back, taking a knee, we would say in the military, and really observing what's going on, of manners and values. And generally being a good person. I mean, we talk about selfless commitment and respect quite a bit in the British Army, and what that actually means. And also, you know, we talk about integrity. You know, especially at places like Sandhurst, where we're training the officer corps as well, because they really will be the you know, upkeepers of integrity. You know, and especially if you're in an organisation that has to make big judgment calls, you know, life and death decisions. So these values and standards and the manners that we impose on our soldiers, then I think is an educational process. I hope that answers your question.
I do apologize. My computer decided to restart right in the middle of Darren's speech.
Oh.
Isn't that great? It was recorded. So what I'm going to do now, Darren, I'm going to go to Ambassador Dino Bati Jalal. Ambassador Dino? I'm going to make sure my computer does not restart. I shouldn't have pressed the...
I'm here. I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, thanks. So remember, the etiquette is when Microsoft says, do you want your software updated? Do not press yes in the middle of a Zoom, yeah? So, all right, Ambassador Dino, one of the things that you said that you do a lot of people-to-people diplomacy, 1001 circles. So this is kind of outside the normal kind of diplomacy angle. Can you tell us a bit more about that? And also, what kind of challenges have you had within the 1001 circles and some of your people-to-people diplomatic endeavors?
Well, thank you for asking that question. You know, the background behind this project is that we noticed that the relations among the Abrahamic religions, the Jewish, and Muslims and Christians, in many parts of the world at the grassroots level were getting worse. And what I mean by this is that, I mean, there's a Pew survey that found that Christians are harassed or discriminated either by government or by non-government actors in 142 countries. Right, that's a lot, right? I suppose in Indonesia too, right? And in some parts of Indonesia, I mean, and Muslims are harassed or discriminated by government or by non-government actors in 144 countries, right? And Jewish people, they experience that in 87 countries, right? And again, this is an ongoing problem. We notice also in the last 2,000 years or so, there has not been a century whereby Christians, Muslims, and Jewish people live totally at peace globally. And you know, that hasn't happened, and we hope the 21st century will be different, right? So this is why we started the 1,000 Abrahamic circles in Indonesia, for example. We are a democratic country. We have rule of law. We have freedom of religion, freedom of speech, but there are pockets of bigotry in many parts of Indonesia, and not just Indonesia. In the United States, we see the same. In France, in Germany, I'm sure in Britain you see pockets of bigotry as well. In Netherlands, in you know, in many parts of both the Islamic world and the non-Islamic world in the Western world. And this is why we decide to attack the problem at the grassroots, because there's too many interfaith conferences where you engage moderates, people who are already like-minded and don't need any convincing about respect across religions. So what we do is we try to pick religious leaders who are somewhat have negative views of the other. From Indonesia, for example, we had this imam who just hated Jewish people. You know, he was very anti-Semitic, and he was a good guy, but he was thought that way by his teacher and his parents, right? So he didn't know, he wasn't exposed to a different narrative. So we got him on this program, and he traveled to Denver, where he met a Jewish rabbi for the first time in his life. Right, and then we made him travel to New Zealand, where he lived in a Christian priest home at Christchurch, of all places, for a whole week, and so on. And after experiencing that trip together and living in the homes of the Jewish rabbi and the Christian priest home, and so on, he came back and he said, everything that I learned was wrong. Right, everything my parents, my madrasa taught me from the previous generations had all been wrong. You know, the Jewish people are just like us. You know, they have their worries, they love their families, they want to do better, and so on and so on. Right. So what I'm saying is that sometimes interfaith conferences are not enough, because you don't expect people who go to one-day conferences and deliver the same speech to the converted are going to make a big impact. What you need to do is reach out to those pockets where there's still a lot of bigotry and negativity, even hatred, and try to see if you can undemonize and rehumanize the people of the other religion in their eyes. And that's what the project is all about.
Wonderful. You were also born in Serbia, in Belgrade.
Yes, yes.
And you served as an ambassador there. Well, Princess Katarina is actually a princess.
Serbia.
I know. It's a good day.
Yugoslavia.
It's for me.
So there you go.
It brought me a big smile on
my
face hearing this.
Yeah. I should be kissing your feet, your hands, and you know.
Please don't embarrass me.
By the way, you're not supposed to kiss anything of ladies.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe that came out wrong.
No.
Right. Princess Katarina. So that did come out wrong. Princess Katarina. I'm just thinking, you know, you're also involved in one of our charities, and some of our friends with Football for Peace, and you met Prince William when he visited us, basically. And I'm just thinking, sometimes, you know, some of our friends or colleagues, they may not know how to conduct a visit. say if we have Prince William or Princess Kate visiting, how do we conduct ourselves? What do we do? How do we behave?
If you're being introduced to them,
Yes.
which is the important thing, is the girls should do a little curtsy, not right down to the ground, because most of the time they get wobbly because they get nervous and everything, so they will fall over, which is rather embarrassing. It's just a little bob, and this is what girls quite often learn how to do in ballet lessons. For men or the boys, all you do is you literally just tip your head like this.
Mm.
You don't need to do any more. I will tell you a story. There's someone who was introduced to Prince Charles, and he quite clearly has been watching a lot of these old films where he sort of got his arm and started waving it like this, and other arm across his stomach and bent right over from his waist. And when he got up, they all looked at each other thinking, what does he want for doing such a huge bow like that? It's just a little tip of the head. If they put their hands out to shake your hands, then you shake your hands as well with them. But you don't go up and give them a big hug or a kiss or anything like that. You just wait for them to do the first move.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I want to ask some of the audience if they have any questions. Let me open it up to the audience. Or better still, do you have questions for each other? I'm talking to the speakers here. You always do. You guys always have questions for each other. So who do I pick? Shall I pick on someone, or I let them ask the question first? I'm not going to pick on a lady.
Can I just continue about the question you asked at the very beginning?
Sure.
About how one behaves in a Muslim country. For being a diplomat, as everyone here knows, that you have to do your homework. You have to know what the rules are in those countries. I went to, as Professor Marie-Catherine had a little embarrassment herself, I had a similar embarrassment as well. I was at Middle Eastern reception, and I was being introduced to I'm not saying who it was, a specific ambassador. And this friend of mine who was doing the introduction saw I was putting my hand out to shake his hand, and he said, Katarina. So as my hand was going out like that, it then came up like that, because I was then realized that at that particular point, you cannot shake hands with every single person. I've also been at a reception where the ambassador was introducing me to the emir, and it was rather embarrassing, but it was rather nice at the same time. He grabbed my hand and introduced me to the emir and said, this is my favorite princess. The reason why he said that, we were tennis partners and we beat everybody on the diplomatic circuit. So, there are lots of little things, as has been said today. You just got to literally, as Darren said, watch. As I said, I stood in a corner, I watched. You have to just literally learn and be guided from the different countries of what to do and how to behave. It's very important you do that, because then you don't get embarrassed. And if you suddenly realize you're doing something wrong, do something quickly with your hands so that you look as if you know what you're doing.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Princess Katarina. Darren, do you have any questions for any of the other participants? Sorry to pick on you, but you're the man, so I have to pick on the guy first. Let's unmute you. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Mohammed. Just a quick question for Ambassador Dino, really. Obviously, I've got some experience of living in the Middle East. It's just one possibly for people that are listening in. And one of the things that took me back slightly of being in the Middle East was we're talking about faux pas, so to speak. And I remember sitting down after engaging and taking some military lessons, and I remember sat there and I was speaking to another instructor, Muslim instructor, and he put his hand on my knee, and I looked down at the hand, and I was obviously a bit of a Westerner, and I was like, it was like an uncomfortable moment. And he explained to me, and it was explained to me by another Westerner, that this is the type of like a term of endearment. And I just wondered if you had any sort of like similar things where other Westerners or other people have felt that way or confided in you.
Yeah, well, yes, absolutely. That's a very interesting observation. In Asian and Muslim cultures, the men are more touchy towards each other, right? They're very distantful towards the women, but in Indonesia, men hold hands a lot, right? As a sign of friendship, right? So yes, do expect that. And also, I want to add, if you go to Muslim country, remember that they pray 5 times a day, right? And it would really impress them is if you know the praying hours and you turn to them and say, hey, I think I'll give you 10 minutes to do your prayer, right? They would love you forever for doing that. Also, one thing that tends to be overlooked is this. In Islam, and Muhammad Abbasi knows this very well, the Prophet Muhammad is seen very differently than in the tradition of Christianity and how they see Jesus. In a sense that, in Western culture, you can make jokes about Jesus, you can have a parody, and so on and so on, right? But in Muslim countries, that's the worst no that you can do. You don't even joke about the Prophet, right? And if you have to say anything, always make sure that it's something respectful and positive, right? And I think that's very useful for Westerners to understand. Yeah. And also on azan, obviously azan is heard everywhere, the calling to prayers. And when you are having a discussions, usually it's polite to stop the discussion and let the calling to prayers finish. It's usually no more than 2-3 minutes.
Thanks, Ambassador Daniel. Professor Marie Catherine, do you have any questions for anyone? Who do you want to pick on?
Actually, I would like to add a little table manner or a dining point that is, I think very important, and that I have seen again and again. When you are invited to a home, there are very, very few countries where if the hostess or the host have cooked, you should absolutely accept a second offer, a second plate, even if it's very small, even if you don't like it, unless you are allergic to it. But in that case, there is another protocol, another way to let the hostess or the host know that you are allergic. But you should always accept a second in your plate, because it's absolutely respectful. I would say that it's not the custom in America, and it took me quite a few years to accept that it was the American culture, just to say you serve them once and then you offer again, and they say no, no, thank you. So of course you don't insist. But I think, and please, all of you, let me know if I'm wrong. I think you should absolutely accept a little bit of a second serving, if I may say. What do you think? What do all of you think?
I think it, as you said, it depends in which country you go to. Because some places give you very small helpings, so you only take a small helping, and it's worthwhile just having just a little bit extra, just for courtesy. Some countries, the more you empty your plate, the more they expect you to eat afterwards. So it's different in every single country that you go to. So look up the culture of what happens in different countries, which is very important.
Absolutely true.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. I'm going to go to, I've got two questions. One's from Simigul Hassan in Denver. And the other question is going to be from Ambassador Jean Pillard, who's currently in the US. But Simi, are you there? Simigul Hassan. Let's see if, okay, Ambassador Jean Pillard.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you. Can we have a visual? Oh, wow. Okay, how are you?
Oh, my apologies. I had to drop off the call. I had something quite important that came unexpectedly. But I wanted to acknowledge everyone on the panel. It's not so much a question, but an acknowledgement of it, what everyone else has been saying. Particularly, I had Ambassador Jalal speaking earlier, and he was talking about not making faux pas and whatnot, and how to use humor when in difficult situation. And I wanted to share an experience with you, and Ambassador, I'd like your comment on it later on. Here I am I arrived in the UK. I was about 2 days in the country. I'm in post. And there is an event being hosted at the House of Lords. It was an ambassadorial event, and here I am, I'm standing there and I'm introducing myself. I had about 5 or 6 ambassadors with me, and there comes a person, and the person was listening onto our conversation, and she said, well, excuse me, I couldn't help to hear that you're from Tahiti. I said, no, ma'am, I'm from Haiti, because if I were from Tahiti, it would be almost impossible to represent Haiti here. And we started going into the difficulties of Haiti and whatnot. And I don't know how we ended up speaking about the cholera in Haiti that has claimed a lot of lives. And she said, well, I don't mean to be rude or anything. Have you any toilet in your country? So here I am in a new country, in a new setting. So nobody in there is my friend. And there's this person who seems to be quite well educated, asking me if I have any toilets in my country. Now, I was about to take a sip on my glass of champagne that I was holding, and I almost choked. And you know, those diplomatic events, you're always surrounded by the packed trinity, which is protocol, alcohol, and cholesterol. They're always present. So I stopped for a minute, and I did not plan. There's no school of etiquette or anything that can plan you for such a moment. And again, that's, I said, well, ma'am, toilet, you said, ma'am. She said, yes, toilets. I said, well, I believe the correct way you call it here in the UK is the loo, because I've read in a book that you call this loo. She said, yes, of course. I said, well, do you know that in Haiti, we have been a democracy since 1804. So She's like, well, I'm aware of some of the history. I said, well, what you call Lou here, ma'am, not only do we have Lou's cousin, great-grandcousin, and uncle. And because we are a democracy, you're also free to roam about nature, but that's Haiti. My God, the room erupted in a situation that was supposed to be quite embarrassing. She saved face. I didn't get upset, and we spent the next hour and a half talking about Haiti and educating her about how things work in Haiti. When I gave the report to my prime minister, he wanted to protest officially. I said, well, but Prime Minister, you can't protest. If I advise you to go and protest, that means you didn't need a diplomat in the United Kingdom. For every opportunity that you have where someone asks such a question, they may mean well, they may just be ignorant. It is my duty to save them face and educate them about how it works. So now that person in the UK is one of our biggest advocates. They just didn't know. So Your Excellency, I'd like your comment on that.
Go
Is
for
it, is it me?
Ambassador. Absolutely, absolutely.
No, I admire that story, and it only proves my point that not every smart man are funny, but every funny man must be smart, because you really have to have a high degree of intelligence to process things into something funny that make people laugh and smile. So it really takes a lot of smarts to produce that. So I really love that story, and I hope I can use that story in some of my story telling moments. Yeah. I hope there's no patent to that story. Yeah.
Not yet, but I'm certain you give me royalties.
I will. Thank you. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks, gentlemen. Simigul Hassan from Denver. Do you have a comment or a
Yes,
question?
two comments and one question. I've forgotten who said shaking hands, but after the virus, I don't think we're going to be shaking hands anymore. Two comments. I think I heard I think Ambassador Dino maybe said Denver, and I wanted to say something about Denver, that in Denver we have a large Jewish community. And I was visiting the center, and there were two ladies who were totally dressed in the black, face covered, everything covered. And I said, how come they are here? And they said, for our charitable program, we've run out of poor Jews. So we're now giving it to the Muslims. So I thought it was quite funny that these Muslim ladies felt very at home, walking into the Jewish center. And my other comment was that I introduced President Bush asked me after 9/11 to help the White House do public relations with Muslims. And I introduced that the White House should have a dinner for iftar during the month of Ramadan, which interestingly, they have carried even through President Trump. At the first iftar, President Bush wanted me to bring 8 women who were involved in the community. The lady who sat at his table, Lebanese background, author, very educated lawyer, I think. In the end, he wanted to thank her, and he reached out to give her a kiss on her cheek. And she just recoiled back. I wish she hadn't done that. I wish she had held her composure and said, no, President Bush, we can't do that. But she didn't handle it well. So at White House, you always, at the end, the president stands and everyone shakes hands, takes a picture, and then leaves. I waited till the end, and then I didn't want him to think that, Muslim women just, are being so rude. I said, President Bush, you can give me a kiss. And I put my cheek forward. And of course he did. And of course, since then, I was known as Simi, who always wants me to kiss her. So I just wanted to share that sometimes it's, especially with American men, I noticed that they really want to thank you and they want to kiss you on the cheek. And Marie, well, I don't know if she has anything to share about that. It's very difficult, how you handle, especially the American diplomats.
Yes, yes.
Marie, do you want to answer that?
To give an example of some difficult embarrassing situation?
No, I
Yeah.
just wondered if you'd ever noticed that any, especially American diplomats wanting to kiss a Muslim woman,
Well, yes, unfortunately, not everybody reads the book of diplomacy. All diplomats have a big book and they also have to go to classes to learn all kinds of rules. And certainly the ones who go to some specific cultures, which are demanding when you compare them to Westerners, and they don't all do the homeworks. And so you do see these kind of embarrassing situations, and you actually feel bad for the person who makes the mistakes because know better. But yes, I have seen quite a few embarrassing moments. But the way you present them are actually funny. So
thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Simi. And just maybe one or two more questions. Princess Katarina, do you want to question any of the participants?
No, I don't. No, I'm quite happy not questioning anyone. But I think maybe a comment that President Bush should have known diplomatically not to kiss a Muslim woman publicly. Maybe that was a bit too forward. Shaking hands, maybe now after the COVID, the Queen always wears gloves. Maybe we should go back to the old days of wearing gloves again. Well, I don't know. What do you think, Marie-Catherine?
I would love the idea. I would love the gloves and hat. Oh, I would not mind that at all. I would follow you. No problem.
I mean, then you can't see how bad one's hands are, and if you've been in the garden the day before or something. So yeah.
So before you know it, I'll be accused of encouraging people to cover up, especially ladies.
No, another thing is from earlier on before, back to the ambassador from Haiti.
Sure.
The lady who said toilet should never have said toilet, because it also shows from where she comes from here in England. Because in our circles and diplomatic circles, it's always the loo or the lavatory or something like that. So I presume it was at the time when you had the outburst in Haiti of why she came and made those comments. So yeah, and just something amusing for you. I'm friends with one of your top celebrities there, particularly his sister, Wycliffe Jean's sister, Melky. And I understand that the two of them are not allowed to be in a country at the same time because of their popularity, and there will be more of a riot just to meet them than anything else. Am I true on that? Am I right? She is adorable. So yeah, but with the etiquette and manners, the etiquette is there for you, where you got to know what and learn how the good manners are, because we've all brought up something about the embarrassing situation, whether it's shaking hands or kissing or curtsying or something like that. Being in diplomatic circles, you should automatically know quickly how to transfer yourself into another diplomatic manner or behavior. I think there's a thing how also it's on the subject at the moment is about Prince Harry. He at the moment is sort of moving away from public duties, and if he wants to give a hug or something to a Muslim woman, for example, then if she allows it, then that's fine. But if he was doing his royal duties, then it would never happen, or it shouldn't happen.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there was a video of Prince Harry thanking a group of ladies, and one of them was a Muslim woman. And all due respect to him, he kind of reached out to the lady to thank her in a different kind of way. And there was a bit of a kind of a, oh my God, what's happening? But his wife pulled him back, and then he realized. So he's a quick learner. He's a good.
I was at a function at the Bosnian embassy, and because they all know me there quite well, a Muslim woman came and gave me a big hug and a kiss, and I just let it happen because I didn't want to be seen being standoffish. So you got to see how things happen and how things are, and you got to know the people so you can react and behave in the best possible manner.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Well, anyone else wants to make any closing remarks or any questions before we end? Professor Marie, any last comments?
Well, I think someone asked the difference between etiquette and manners. Etiquette, to make it very simple, etiquette, it's to understand the why behind the rules. The etiquette it's the concept of rules. And for example, just to be to have it very simple, why is the name tag worn on the right instead of the left shoulder? Well, it's because it's easier for others to see your name when you shake hands. And by extending your right hand, it just automatically goes to your name. And manners are part of etiquette, and they are just polite behaviors that reflect kindness, consideration, respect. You may not know all the rules about etiquette, but you certainly can have manners, and it's just as simple as please and thank you. That would make you to be polite, to be to be considerate. So it's, I mean, of course, it's a much more complex than that, but often, people don't know what is etiquette, what good manners, and perhaps it helps a little bit with those very simple examples.
Just a quick question for all of the questioners, for all the speakers. Are you running any online classes or sessions where people can join and see some of the good work that you guys are doing? Anyone?
I'm not doing anything at the moment.
Okay. So maybe with COVID, it's an opportunity, I think, for everyone to maybe connect with each other and see what you can do to help people understand, to learn more about etiquette and manners. Darren, do you have anything to say?
I was just going to say a quick one, Mohammed, just on online communication and through LinkedIn predominantly.
Yeah.
That we do some live webinars, some vlogs There's some blogs on cultural behaviours and team belonging and things that might help people, educate them in certain ways, give them some top tips and some guidance on general leadership stuff, cultural behaviours, and we've had some good response actually, and I think it's pushing the right message.
Fantastic, fantastic. Ambassador Dino, any questions before we end?
No, I just want to add as a concluding thought that I'm quite concerned to see the impact of social media on mannerism, because you know, before social media and so on, you know, rudeness are not really seen in the newspapers or on TV, right? But now there's no limit. Everyone, you know, if anyone is as rude as can be, that person will have space. And the trend overwhelmingly I see, at least in Indonesia context, is that there's a lot more rude people with little manners who occupy the social media space than the polite people with manners. And you know, this is quite concerning, you know, because my kids open up social media all the time, and you know, they're exposed to that, you know. And yeah, so it's something that worries me, a trend that wasn't there before, and I don't know how long this will continue, yeah. And or how the tide will be turned back to more mannerism than otherwise.
Well, maybe one of the things we can do collectively is keep pushing out information about etiquette and manners in different ways, because a lot of people feel comfortable behind social media, behind aliases, sometimes even behind their own names, and come out with stuff that lies deep within them, and they actually insult themselves. So manners and etiquette is not necessarily about communicating with others as much as communicating with yourself. And if you feel good about yourself, then you will feel good about with other people. Ambassador Jean Pelot, do you want to say something before we close?
I also believe that because the social media is such new, maybe there is a new space now for people involved in the world of etiquette to redefine the rules for how it's done properly online. Having said that, I think, I don't know if you guys done it already, but I wanted to publicly acknowledge Mo. Mo has been extraordinary and oftentimes doesn't get enough recognition. I met Mo when I was serving in London, and ever since, I cannot even count how many times he's introduced me to someone. You need something, Mo is there for you. Mo, I wanted to publicly acknowledge you and thank you for what you do.
Can I ask you very quickly, were you as an ambassador here in London?
In the UK. I was head of mission in London.
Yes, when?
1994 to 1996.
Okay.
2014, my God.
2014. Then we could easily have met at one or two of the diplomatic receptions, because I used to go to all of them.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, I think I'm the one who is talking to everybody, not the one who's standing in the corner, which I normally do.
No, it's good. I mean, as always, we allow the princess to Her Royal Highness the last words. So, Princess Katarina, any last words before we finish?
I think one thing very quickly, as social media has been brought up, I have noticed something. Since the COVID, those who are usually quite nice have become nicer. Those who are not so nice, I have noticed a lot more people have become nastier. So I think, you know, we should never take it to heart the way that other people behave, as long as we stand strong and know where we stand ourselves, and don't get into an argument. It's not worth it.
Thank you. And I must acknowledge whenever someone is nice to me. Thanks, Ambassador Jean Pelot, for those lovely words. And I will get you back for saying all those nice things to me. Don't worry.
Anyway, Mohammed, thank you so very much. And Darren, very quickly, did you know someone called Simon Barry?
I do know Simon.
Oh, no.
Some time ago. That's right. Yes. Yeah.
He is so naughty.
You have to tell me more.
Just look at his face. It says it all. He's very cheeky. And yeah, we've known him for over 30 years. And yeah, he's very naughty and cheeky. So I thought he's great fun. He's a great personality and character. He was in the parachute regiment as well, for those who don't know. And he now lives in South Africa, and he runs his own security company down there. So, and he goes to Iraq and places like that regularly. So yeah,
brilliant.
You should get in touch with him again.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to connect you all up, whoever requests me to do so, via email. And thank you, Your Royal Highness Princess Katarina.
Thank you.
Thank you to Ambassador Dino Pratijalal. Thank you to Professor Marie Catherine Maiden, and last of all, thank you to Darren Robinson and other friends here, and hope we can meet again online or even in person after the lockdown.
Lovely.
And thanks for attending this.
Very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Abasi. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe. Thank you.
Okay. Ambassadors, both nice to meet you and nice to see you again. And good luck with everything with the COVID and in your positions where I know it is very difficult. Oh, shut up. Sorry, it's the dog. So yes, and Mohammed, thank you so very much for putting this together. So it's been absolutely wonderful. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Darren, you know Simon.
I do briefly. Yes, I do. Some time ago. So
if you want to be reconnected, just let me know.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, he's actually a good friend. So it's yeah. So okay, bye everybody. Bye. Take care. How do we get out of here?
Just the leave meeting one.
Leave meeting.